What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Depeche Mode, and we're going back to very early Depeche Mode once again. I wanted to start by giving a shout out to Han Solo, massive friend and champion of the channel. He shared a handful of tunes from Depeche Mode's very earliest phase with me, and through those tracks I've come to understand that a couple tunes on Speak and Spell, one of my favorite and most nostalgic albums ever, were actually more polished and restrained and sort of civilized compared to their original incarnation prior to Depeche Mode meeting Daniel Miller and beginning to, signing with Mute and beginning to work with him on production. And indeed, I enjoy the sort of moody, kind of darker, more intense and gritty sound of the couple tracks I've heard from their early live shows, and it's impressive the degree to which they created this really dynamic and electric and sort of moody sound, despite being independent musicians. They weren't getting any assistance from long-time producers in the industry. So yeah, I've come to be very interested in this earliest phase of Depeche Mode, and what I am now going to listen to is a tune from that phase, but which never saw the light of day until the late 90s. There's a tune, or not a tune, there's a compilation called Coming Back to You, which is Coming Back to You Present, a tribute to Depeche Mode and others. This was released in the late 90s, and it includes a handful of tunes that come from Depeche Mode's very earliest phase, but which were never released on studio albums or singles. And so they're basically all given uncredited writing credit to Vince-Clarke, because again, he was sort of the driving musical force of their very earliest form. So ultimately, we're going to listen to a tune called Addiction, which I believe was part of Depeche Mode's early live shows. It's an interesting term in light of what many people will come to know about Depeche Mode in the decades that follow. But ultimately, addiction, it's not just in relation to chemical substances. It can relate to any sort of behavior or stimulus that, for whatever reason, the person in question, whether it's psychological or quite literally like neurochemical, they come to not only enjoy and depend and rely on, but literally need whatever that stimulus is. So ultimately, I'm not sure that this is another one that will be an instrumental. It does seem that they had more, they had fewer lyrics, it feels like, in the early phase. It feels like, they'd have like one or two verses, maybe a chorus a couple times, but I've heard a couple instrumentals now. Even the early version of Photographic, it felt like the singing was a little de-emphasized. It was a bit more kind of like monotone, and it was just part of the overall sonic. So I'm curious to hear, how much lyrical elements, or like how much singing there will be in the tune overall. But let's find out. This is Depeche Mode, a very early track credited to Vince-Clarke, and it's called Addiction. Very raw recording, which I don't mind, but it has to be noted. Oof. Like crystal method or something. simplicity to it. It's got an edge to it. It's harder than you would think, knowing Speak and Spell. Their early shows sound like very rambunctious. I still can't make out that line. Very interesting. I didn't know that was actually going to be, like, for some reason I thought it was going to be like a studio recording, but yeah, it sounds like it was taken directly from another one of their live shows. It actually sounds like, you know, live recorded sound rather than a direct line audio recording. But yeah, very cool, and again, electric, edgy, a bit harder, a bit darker than the sound we would ultimately hear on Speak and Spell, though I realized that track was not used on Speak and Spell or in any capacity. So yeah, once again, shout out to Han Solo. It's been interesting to learn more about this group that, again, I do know a fair amount about. I have been listening to them for a very long time, and I've thought about their songs for a very long time, but doing these reaction series, even for a group like Depeche Mode that I have known for, 35 plus years, it's amazing how much I didn't know. It's amazing how much there is still to learn. So once again, shout out to all of you who are providing me information as well as informing others. One of the coolest things about doing this channel is watching people who really do love these different groups learn from each other and sort of like, oh, that's awesome, I never knew that, and here's a link to this video and so on. So yeah, shout out to all the people, whether it's Depeche Mode fans or fans of other groups or fans of multiple groups that I've been going through. So big ups to all you. Let me know what you think of this one. I will see you next time. Peace.